All right. Hey guys, welcome. Today we're going to be covering some really good, awesome four topics. And not only that, I have a really good friend of mine, and not is he a good friend, he is a great human being. His name is Matt Sanders. He has a Sanders Electric Company. And today, what we're going to be going over shortly is going to be what every homeowner should know. And also, before I get a little too far into this, what I wanted to do is let's introduce Matt quick. And so, my part of who Matt is I've known him for a while. He is one of the most honest, genuine people. I think that when we are on a job together, we've been able to do so many. I think that one of the greatest aspects about what he does is he takes the time not just to get the job done, but slows down the process, and he really enters into um, the reality of like there are different things that need to happen. I think sometimes with what we do, we go so quick, you know. But anyways, enough about me. Matt, would you like to share a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, hey everybody. My name's Matt. We're electrical contractors, Sanders Electric. We're XtraMile is actually one of my first customers when I opened up my own business. I actually approached Justin because our values fit so well together. I thought that I couldn't imagine there being a better team. So that was how I wanted to start our business. We actually started just my daughter and I. She was graduating high school and I got my master's. And so we opened up our business to kind of have a family run organization. Like Justin said, slow things down just a little bit and a little bit more personal approach to the electrical business. So
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, it was kind of funny because I remember the first time I talked to you, I think I actually sent you a video first
you
on
did.
like Facebook or something like that, and I was
Yeah.
like, "What the heck am I doing?" Like, and for us, we get so busy and caught up in our own worlds, and so it was a really big privilege to be able to get to know you more, and obviously get to help serve others. So, real quick, the one other thing I do want to say about Matt is our team, a lot of times when we work with other people, and so it's like we're trying to organize things and whatnot. One of the things I really admire about the Sanders team, right, the electrical team, is the attention to when fixtures are coming in and knowing, is this going to work or not? Typically, we're starting to find it even before we start buying it, which is so helpful because we buy hundreds of fixtures. And I think I just wanted to say like that's a part of your skill set, though. It's how you create your team and bring that attention because a lot of times, even in my for sure in my past is like, oh, we'll get it, we'll put it in, and we didn't really think about the afterthought of it, or like, will this actually last? So I do appreciate that with you so much. So, all right, let's get going here.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Our team, I appreciate my team really a lot too. And as far as yeah, we definitely try and look ahead on projects and it's been going really well actually with you guys. So
No,
appreciate
appreciate
it. Yeah.
it. All right, here we go. So, what every homeowner should know about their electrical. So, obviously, when we're looking at electrical service, I think there's a really big disconnect, especially when I started getting into the industry between what was real and what was myth. And I think that part of it, and not having wisdom of, for example, like about outlets and really the service panel itself. So let's get a little bit into this. So today what we're going to talk about is service panel and the safety. We're going to hit some GFI, CFI outlet importance, which is, I believe, one of the main leading causes to house fires, or certain things like that. Am I right on that, Matt?
Yeah, that's there's a lot of different things that can go wrong in homes, but electrical is definitely one of the leading causes of home fires.
Yeah, and then we'll talk about, hiring and some good questions to be asking yourself when you do have a project. What is skilled versus unskilled? So maybe we could use the term handyman in that. And the last one is backup generators. Do you have any comments that you want to hit on really quick before we dive into that further?
As far as which one, Justin? Any of
Uh,
them?
any of them. Do you have a quick thought that came to mind?
Yeah, I just as far as panels go, um, I think the biggest thing that we run into is, people's houses age over time, and we have this old electrical equipment that's out there. So there's like you were saying, there's all these myths and stuff about what's safe and what's not. And as time goes on, codes get much better, much more stringent as far as what we can do. These days, we're arc faulting and ground faulting almost everything in the home. And so things have changed just a little bit. So our remodels look much different than they used to, where we used to just be able to um, upgrade a panel. We can't do that anymore. We have to upgrade services now. Things have just progressed a little bit technology wise. Breakers are much more sensitive than they used to be. The wiring has to be done accordingly and things like
Yeah.
that.
So if you could give me just a really quick snapshot of a service panel versus like the service, like the actual service system, can you
Mhm.
kind of break that down? Is that two different parts or is that just kind of one of a whole?
The overall service, yeah, that gets very technical. The terms get very technical, but the overall service includes the electrical panel.
Mhm.
And that's, typically in homes we have anywhere from 100 to a 200 amp panel. Some bigger homes are 250, and you have any variation there in between. But your electrical panel is kind of like the heart of the home. It's gonna pump power to the rest of the house. So all of the individual loads, your fridge, your microwave, all of those things that are kind of the end user of the electric, is the difference between like 100 and a 200 amp panel. Some the homes with 100 amp panel were a little bit more limited to what that can output versus a 200 will give you much more space in your home for different electric hot tub and different fridge, just different loads, whatever a person would want.
Yeah, I actually just I received this question not too long ago. It was if I got so if I have a 100 amp panel and how do I know what kind of panel I have? Is there an easy way to know if it's a 100 service or 200 service panel?
Yeah, the easiest way is to look at, normally there's a switch that's either in the top of the panel or the very kind of in the middle of the panel normally.
Hmm.
And that'll either say right on it 100 or 200, or sometimes it'll be on a label, depends on how old the panel is.
Yeah,
Sometimes the labels are gone, but typically the best way to find out is to look at that breaker and
yeah.
see what the breaker says on it.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think another thing that was kind of funny is um, when it comes to servicing like appliances and things like that, you mentioned something I think is really important to probably hit on is the technology that is in like even a little bracket, these little breaker things. Like there's so much technology and things like that in it. So when you don't upgrade something, and then all of a sudden for example, what happens a lot is we'll we'll talk about like you just don't have enough power, and they're like, well, I have 100 amps, and I was able to upgrade my appliances. They're more energy efficient. So why is my breaker always going off? Do you have an idea?
So if you have if you're overloading a 100 amp panel, if you have a house that has a lot of electric load, let's say you have electric range, you have electric dryer, electric water heater, all of that type of stuff, then if you only have a 100 amp panel, you might get breaker trips based on overload.
Mm,
And if that happens, I think where you were going, Justin, was with the new electronics, and sometimes the breakers can be a little bit more sensitive. The new style arc fault GFI breakers are definitely more sensitive. They're definitely safer for your home. So as we upgrade, let's say if we do a kitchen remodel, if we're moving to electric appliances from gas with only a 100 amp panel, we might have to upgrade that to a 200 amp to accommodate the additional load.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
and that's something, that's so important, I think, is the safety wise of it.
mhm,
Because sometimes, like, I remember, we get in situations where we open something up or we had a hunch on it, but then it was like, well, it's code wise, technically, they're like, you need to rip everything out and restart from the back to the panel. But then it's like, it's not it's not economical, but at the same time we do have, like your schooling and licensing and stuff like that, right? There's a lot that weighs on electrician's mind and heart that is so much more than just a budget. I think is important to remember, and that this is like a good a really good example on where someone who is just going quickly and like, oh, I want to go in and finish it and get
mhm.
out. I think this is such a great example of like that slowing down and you're looking, like your house hasn't been updated for 15 years. Think about it. The next remodel that your house has, if you stay in it or not, on there are 10, 15 years, a lot changes, yes, but the other thing is like there's a lot of safety that needs to be remembered um, while we're having the opportunity to uncover things. Does that make sense? And
Yeah, for sure.
and
So a lot of what we're doing, what we run into, Justin, you touched on it just for a second there, was that when we come into a remodel, if there's any sort of upgrade in the electrical system that needs to happen, if let's say we have to go from 100 to a 200 amp service,
mhm,
that's a large ticket item that needs to be addressed, up front.
yeah,
And if it's a situation where what we typically do is we talk people through the process, right?
yeah,
If this is the last remodel they're ever going to do and their electrical panel is sufficient, we're typically not upgrading,
yeah,
right? But if they have future plans for to add a shed out back or to add a chicken coop or to do this or do that, we typically are going to look at um, upgrading the service, which now includes the exterior meter and regrounding the house, which leads to a real safety upgrade. So
yeah,
it's not just the amperage upgrade from 100 to 200. It's a massive safety upgrade to the new standards of today with
yeah.
arc fault and ground fault and the new grounding standards that we have.
Yeah. Um, Speaking of that, that brings me to another really good thought is outlets, right? So
Mm.
real quick, I am not the greatest at language on the on some of this, but so you have like this, right? Where you have like an outlet that has a little coil in it, and then you have another one that is like you kind of plugs in on the back. What are some when you're going into a house, right, that's been there for a while, and you're like, hey, this is one of the reasons why we really need to update some of these things. Can you give me a little bit of example on why, which one would maybe be better and what you could catch during a home inspection?
Yeah, can you stay right on that picture there, Justin? So, one of the things that we always tell people is if you're running into, if you're plugging into your outlet and the plug falls out, it might be time to look at replacing outlets. There are a good, actually, we did a project this last year that was a house fire that started at an outlet.
Mm,
And it was just a situation where the wires had been, there's two ways of wiring outlets. One is the way that we see in this picture, where the wires curled around the screw. And that's the best way because that provides a mechanical connection. The other way that electricians do when houses are wired new, electricians will just poke the wire into the back of the outlet, and
mm,
there's just a little clip on the inside of the outlet that holds it there. But
yeah,
over time, those get loose, and the wires start to get loose in the back, and then they can arc and start a fire. And so that's we do see there's a good portion of like I said, we had a house fire this last year that started at an outlet, loose connection at an outlet, was poked into the back of the outlet, started a fire, and they literally had to redo the entire house. That we gutted the entire inside of the house. We had to rewire everything. These poor people lived in their garage for 2.5 years while
Oh,
they fought with insurance and everything else.
yeah.
Um, Really, these are maintenance items that we as homeowners don't really always think of.
Yeah.
We think of replacing furnace filters and this and that, and when something clogs up, we,
Cover it,
have
yeah.
to plunge it. But like, we never think about replacing outlets, and as things get loose, it does create arcs and sparks, and that's how fires start.
Can you explain to me a little bit the term arc? What is that referring to?
So an arc would be how electricity would jump from like point A to point B. So it would be a arc of electricity that's jumping something through the air. So it's an arc.
Crazy. Yeah, I remember like it was like my own, it was like my parents' house and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, like if the breaker trips, because this is in my brain, right? I'm like, oh, if I'm removing this outlet and the breaker trips, it'll just turn off and not shock me, you know? And I was so far from the truth. I remember my grandpa was like I was like, and like jumped back. My grandpa grabbed me and, pushed me away. I'm like, why didn't it trip? Why, like, you plug something in and it causes so much power, it trips right away. He's like, well, not everything is actually put in correctly or whatnot. And I think that's it's a funny example, but it's something that is real. I think everybody at some point in their life, either plugging something in or like static, like we've all experienced a little bit, especially now with smartphones and the cord. Um,
Right.
I think it's just funny because like it's a very real thing, and this is probably one of the things that for sure gets overlooked 100% because it's not physical. A
Mhm.
plumbing pipe, right, drops a little bit of water over time, and you're like, oh shoot, electrical wire doesn't really drop water or anything, and then at one time you're like, oh, like it's a huge responsibility. Can
Right.
you I do have a slide here, but I did want to ask, like, what does it take to become an electrician? Like what are some of the things that you had to do to get your master's? And
So
what is a master's? Like,
yeah, so my path, I mean, is not unlike most electricians out there. Most of us start with trade school. We go to a couple years of trade school. And then my particular path was 2 years of trade school, and then a 4-year apprenticeship, which you go to school the entire apprenticeship. So you have 4 more years of schooling. And then you have to take a extremely complicated test to get your journeyman license. And then you have to put in some time after that, log some hours before you're eligible to take your master's exam. Then you can take your master's exam, which is basically an engineering test. It's hard. Um, and as with your licensing, there's always upkeep. So we have to take classes every year for to keep our licensing up. We have insurance. There's all kinds of things that go along with that. But yeah, the training is extensive for electricians
yeah. And for good reason, right?
for
It's
good reason.
the house fire, obviously that, but there's also beyond that is like keeping the assets of people alive and
That's
safe.
right.
You know, um, One of the things that I used to just make fun of all the time is the countertop, like an island outlets and that stuff, right? Because they had them on the side, and then they're like, "Oh, you need to do a pop in," and then I remember hearing the story of kids going by and grabbing the crock pots or something like that. And I actually witnessed it. I was over at a friend's house, and the kids are all playing and stuff like that, and the kid was like racing around and there's like stuff on there. I was like, holy crap, like this is a real situation because we used to downplay it all the time.
Right.
Um, and obviously every situation, family is different, but it's like it's not a it's not something to take lightly. I think I have a lot of people in my sphere of influence. Oh yeah, well like we're gonna replace the breaker real quick. I'm like, guys, it's more there's it's like car parts. There's so many things that don't work together. And then there are things that do work together, but it isn't you can't just chat GPT this anymore.
Right.
is there's so many different brands and products that you need the wisdom of like somebody who literally has their license and also literally the representation of their life if something was to happen, you know.
Well, and things change so often now. We go through code changes, and the code changes are significant these days with technology change. So what'll happen, we run into sometimes where people will do their own wiring, and they'll call for inspection and they'll fail miserably.
Yeah.
And they don't understand why. Well, because, 10 years ago, I could do it this way, but you can't do that anymore. Things have completely changed. So, we obviously recommend having professionals do this stuff. We go through a lot to get our licensing and to keep our, schooling up. And the electricians out there really are lifelong learners. That's what we look for in our electricians, guys that want to learn and grow throughout their career, because it really is one of those types of careers where safety standards always change. The codes always change. We're really in a business that's driven by insurance agents and
Mm,
lawyers. The whole code book is insurance agents and lawyers.
yeah.
So where it's all driven for safety and to provide the best possible outcomes for homeowners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a uh really good like especially like most general contractors, we know electrician's role is really important. And a lot of homeowners think that we can in fact do electrical things. Actually we cannot. There's a lot of us that in my industry that they will on some parts of it because they're we're not supposed to because it's not just not our role, but there's licenses and then also safety things that are in the way, that are wanting to protect the homeowners in such a good way. I mean, that's like, what was it, like almost 15 years of overall school that you take plus renewing?
Yeah.
It's pretty wild. I did want to share something that you shared with me. So, can you give me like what is the true value of a home electrical inspection and what like when someone goes through it, give me, like an aided like ABC way that you guys find the most value is given to somebody who needs or is looking for answers.
Um, so as far as like the home inspection goes, what a lot of things that we look for on home inspections are, again, back to that panel. How does your panel look? How do the breakers look? Are they loose? Have they tripped 8,000 times over the last 20 years and don't even function anymore? And then, we go through and just check things out, make sure the connections all look tight and stuff like that. And then we really look at ground fault. Um, is the kitchen ground faulted? Are the bathrooms ground faulted? Do they function? A lot of people, a lot of our GFIs and outlets that people have in their homes, the safety features don't even function because they've been there so long and maybe tripped, 1,000 times over the years, and they don't even work anymore. So we just do those checks, and these are all checks that we do to prevent fire, really. And smoke detectors. We'll go through and look at your switching and make sure that your switches don't just fall down when we turn them on and things like that. And a lot of it is a homeowner interview. Have you been having flickering lights?
Yeah,
Have your breakers been tripping?
hmm
The biggest things for homeowners, I think, are, do you get tripping breakers? And it's really easy for us to just go reset a breaker without thinking about, well, why did that actually happen? Is there an issue there
Yeah.
that is creating that trip? Um, and also the outlets, I mentioned this earlier, but if you plug a cord in and it falls out of the outlet, it's probably a sign that your overall electrical system needs some help. And maybe outlets need to be replaced, updated to current standards, and are probably, if they're original with the home, they're probably all stabbed in the back and not mechanically um, secured to the wiring system.
Yeah, I think one question I have is, so when you're selling a home, right?
Yeah.
And or you're planning to be in a home, is it the homeowner's responsibility or is it a home inspector's responsibility, for that home if they did have something that needed to be adjusted?
It ends up the home inspectors typically will catch that stuff.
Mhm.
But the homeowner ends up with the financial responsibility to, and that stuff's worked out on sale or it's fixed or, whatever. There's any number of ways to go about that. But it ends up being the homeowner's responsibility. So we also run into a lot of people they'll try and save money on a remodel project. And so they'll bring in a handyman or something like that to do the wiring and they won't pull permits.
Yeah,
And so then they go to sell their house and they run into these issues because they have unpermitted work. So then they have to hire an electrician to come in and inspect everything, go through everything to sign off on it so that and then have an inspector come look at it. So it just creates a lot of issues on on a final closeout of sale of a home.
yeah. And one more thing. This is a little off track, but I think I get a lot of times is like, well, I've already waited 10, 15 years. Why can't I wait another 3, 4, 5 years if the codes just keep changing? And I'm already used to having crappy lights that are like an outlet that doesn't work. What are, like there's I don't know if the word's apathy, but like I do it with the garbage sometimes. Like you ever have that where like the garbage is like piling up and you're like, oh, I'm gonna stuff it down. I got a little bit more time, a little bit more time, or and my wife's like, what the heck? Because she's the one that cares, and obviously, dude, I'm just like going throughout my day. I have a lot of other things to worry about. So with this stuff, is there like, from your perspective, being in the industry, been around doing this for a while, is there a time that is best to really like focus on these things? Is it, for example, when you've been in the house 4 or 5 years? Is it when you first move in? Is it right before you sell, do your whole remodel and hope for the best? Like from your perspective, what have you seen that best helps?
I think it's just being aware of your situation. If you, like I said, if you plug a cord in and it's falling out of your outlets, it might be time to look at things. You might just be aged to that point where things need to go through, have us go through everything and look at it, and just make sure that that's not the case behind the walls as well. When we
Yeah,
open up boxes, does the wiring fall out as well,
yeah,
So, but what I would say to that, Justin, is, uh, you know, if my kids are sleeping in a room and and I have questions or doubts about the wiring, it makes me nervous. So, from what I've seen with, house fires and things of that nature,
yeah,
that type of stuff is, we take it seriously on our side. Obviously, we try and go above and beyond with what we're providing for people as far as the quality of wiring that they're getting. Um,
yeah,
but you don't have that on a lot of new home builds. On a lot of new home builds, contractors move through them really quick. So you get, loose terminations or this or that. And that over 10 years, 20 years can definitely add up. And things do, degrade over time.
yeah,
So it's, the best time to, if you're thinking remodel, the best time to go through it is before we go down that road. We really take a look at things and really plan well for what's needed and
Yeah,
what's not needed, quite frankly.
yeah.
Um,
That's
you look like you
oh,
had a question, so I stopped.
no, I think well, so I've had the privilege of going into hundreds of homes now.
Mhm.
Like um and I think what happens sometimes is people are so eager to start. So eager, my wife at like 2 a.m., like let's tear down a wall or something like that. What happens is like I go into houses where they remodel, they're getting ready to demo stuff, and then they're like they get burnt out on it by the time the drywall comes on. I'm like, hey guys, like before you put the drywall on and you covered all this stuff and where are your outlets? What's going on? And 90, like almost a lot of I won't put a percentage. A lot of the time there's outlets and we've done it are buried freaking everywhere.
Mhm.
Like, and so they're asking me as a contractor, hey, come in and I need you now. General scope of work. I'm like, man, if you would have just like it sounds ridiculous, but like just paid either electrician to walk through, a designer,
Mhm.
using you don't like if you're somebody who wants to do it yourself, it's totally fine.
Yeah.
But it's like using the skill set of not tangible, but the mindset of people that are doing it day in, day out that
Mhm.
can stop it and relieve so much suffering between you and your wife fighting for another unfinished project or like an outlet, right? A lot of times I see this so many times is that like people get new cabinets or something in their bathroom, so they like move the light over and then they like put in a can light above the shower and without it, like this just happened yesterday. I went into this house and the can light above the shower continues to drip, you know? Anyone ever see that before?
Yeah.
Like from the condensation and stuff, and it's nice out. And they're like, "Oh, I must have, an ice dam or something like that." I'm like, "No, dude, it's the condensation from using the shower, and you
Mhm.
don't have a bath fan, And it's funny because some people even have a bath fan, but it's not hooked up properly. So like, well, it's just a fan that goes in the attic. I'm like, okay,
So
but
does your
anyways,
mold. Yeah.
I'm getting too deep into this because I we're around this so much and we truly care at the end of the day about people and the quality of lives that they have. But for those that are watching this replay, I do have a little thing for you here. So Matt, typically it's like $300 to go on doing a home inspection in
Yeah.
like the
Yep.
metro area.
Yep.
So this is if you guys would like to reach out to Matt, right? And we have this cool code here. He'll do a actual like free home inspection, which is a checklist that he was talking about, looking at different outlets and stuff. And I think it'd be so, in my opinion, right? If you're thinking about a remodel and you're starting to work with a general or something like that, like get him in before some of my favorite people that I worked with is when they start doing a lot of the prep work before I get there so that
Mhm.
I don't have to give them all the great news. So,
Right.
and then they're like, well, what is this guy now? And I'm like, it's a common knowledge, but it's like also, this is such a great way to know your house well. And not only that, but know the safety parts of it. And then also for the guys, right? Your wife may actually be happy because you're not like tinkering around with stuff with like outlets and things. And maybe it's just a simple breaker fix that they can do on site that day, whatnot. So anything you want to add to that?
No, that's really good. I would encourage those home inspections. I mean, we're here to help people, and when we come in, especially if you're thinking remodel, if you're about to talk to Justin about a remodel, and there's maybe some ideas that you had for your space that, but you're not sure if it'll work with your existing electrical system. If there's any question at all about a panel upgrade stuff like that, that's definitely the time to bring us in because we can really help plan. I think that's the biggest thing is just the planning for the unknown. And we can't always catch everything until walls are opened up and things like that. But we can definitely look down the road and help plan for, the future use of your space too. If you're remodeling, typically we're remodeling so that people can use these spaces for family and for their family events and family whatever. And so, we're really geared to help give the best possible solutions in those cases for, not only today, but moving forward. Your
Yeah.
family planning, your maybe you're almost an empty nester, but you're gonna take on grandkids and who knows. So there's any number of reasons.
Yeah, and that brings me to a super important part. So depending on what phase of life you're in, and you got kids and stuff like that, Sherburne County, you would think because we have the great energy plant right in like Monticello, Big Lake, Becker area, that we wouldn't have power grid issues. My grandparents yesterday lost their power last yesterday, like during the day, like just randomly, right? And so I think this is such a timely thing about talking about backup generators. And then also not only the backup generators, but like the practicality of what you should be asking for when you're looking at doing a backup generator, right? So real quick, Matt, give us the lowdown here. What is a generator for a house?
Yeah, so a generator just provides power to the home when there's no utility power. So what we look at with generators is really, a couple different things as far as our clients go. Really, there's like three or four different things. One is like, are you a good client? Even some people have never had a power outage. They work remote or they work like in an office and they travel half their life or whatever. You're probably not the best candidate. You probably don't need a generator.
Yeah,
But there's people that experience power outages on a regular basis. The utility north of town is not always the best, but or you might have, critical things at home. You might have
yeah,
freezers full of food and stuff like that where you can't be without power for a day.
right. Yeah,
So when we look at generators, we really look at A, is are you a good client for us even? Because we don't want to sell you stuff that you don't need. B is things to think about are like, would you go gas or like natural gas or diesel fuel? And most homes have natural gas supply already, so it's much easier for us to just tap into that.
right.
Um, so gas or diesel. And then we want to know always, do we want to back the whole home up or just a partial home? Do you just want to back up your refrigerator and your sump pump? Or do you want to back up the entire house so you can just live unencumbered by power outage?
Yeah,
Um, and then, the other thing for that would be, uh, yeah, the whole or partial home, I think, is the biggest thing. Um,
yeah.
if you and what size service you have, right?
Mhm.
So you might have 100 amp service. You might only need a partial home generator for something like that.
Yeah.
So it's just hard to, every client's a little different. What we do is we just come in and look at things and really go through is like what your needs are and size your system based on that.
Yeah. I think one of the things to mention with that is I'm remembering a situation where the person's like, "Well, the power went out, but my water doesn't work." I'm like, "There's a
Right.
pump that goes from your well into your
Right.
house." You
Right.
know, they're like, "Oh, it's, I heard it was like gravity fed." I'm like, "Yeah, everything's gravity fed to go into your sewer." It's just, and then there's no, there's no, it's just kind of funny because it's not like you always have to go to the buy the biggest greatest thing, and you like somebody we know having a electric car and then the power goes out, then what do you do? So it's not just doing that, not looking at anybody, but it's also like the simple things, like, so you have people that you love and care about, elderly or whatnot, people who have vulnerable needs. I think it's so important that you can service and care about them so well by the quality of life they have if there was a power outage.
Mhm.
And if there was, because, Elon isn't up there with like magic, what are those things called? Drones that like are sourcing the electric grid of all over Minnesota. So if he's not going to do that, I think it's such a powerful, good thing, right? And a way
Right.
to care about somebody
Well, it's
is
and
that
again,
practicality.
right. And again, every client's different, right? Some clients have a need for, generator, battery backup, and they want to produce their own, so they want solar.
Yeah.
Some people have grandma living at home that needs to stay plugged into the wall and can't go without power for a machine that she has to be on for her health.
Yeah.
And that becomes a big deal. Other people are like, hey, when the power goes out, my sump pump doesn't run and my basement floods immediately, right?
Oh
So that
man.
becomes it's like spend a
Yeah.
little bit of money on a
Yeah, I've been
generator
there.
or
I've been
remodel the
there.
basement, right? So a lot of it is, these are preventative type things that are definitely offerings for people. And again, I would say 100%, if you are thinking remodel, what I would say a couple of the biggest things that I would do during the remodel process is think about future electrical needs. Do you maybe want to put a hot tub out back sometime,
Yes.
right? Because we can run that wire during the remodel process and save you some money from having to run it through finished surfaces and stuff after remodel. Then another thing would be generators.
Yeah.
Do you have any inclination in the future that you would want to add a generator to your home? And if
Right.
you do, then what we should do is look at what that would entail and maybe even make that first initial purchase of a transfer switch. And
Hmm.
maybe we do that service work while we do the panel, if we have to upgrade the panel or stuff like that. There's things that we can do without going all the way down the road. we
Hmm.
can we can prep for future and keep it cost effective so that
Yeah.
you can take smaller bites around your home to get things up to date, safer, backed up, producing solar energy if you want, kind of that whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
especially that's a great point because what people don't realize, and this happened back in Maple Grove in Rogers time frame, is when people started moving, like they started doing developments and stuff like that, and these older houses stayed in that development. And what would happen is the people, after a certain time, those that had farmlands and old houses, they ended up living in like a newer type development, and they're the old house in a newer development. And
Mhm.
I've seen this a lot where, for example, when it comes to sub pumps and or uh, just like practical things like that, the water table, because they finished all that land and now it's drying, it's the water runoff is different. People
Mhm.
have issues in their sub pump, but the other thing is like the little like fans that people have in their attics and old farmhouses and stuff like that. It's usually plugged into an outlet. Like that, I've seen so many projects and things like that that is such a negative thing to have. So if you do have an older house in the Sherburne County area, that I really would encourage you to get it looked at because most times there's this time frame between 60s and like 60, obviously older than 60 houses, but like 60 to 80 years old of like, they were built in 1960, 1980. There's a lot of code changes with Romex and wires that happened after that you can like catch in and make sure that everything's going to be okay with your home before you purchase it. But
Yeah. Yeah, the big thing is any of the new homes that were built, in the 80s, 90s, more so in the 90s and
mhm,
later. A lot of those homes all have just wiring that's stabbed in the back of devices. And that stuff is all ready to be replaced at this time.
yeah,
So
right. Well, Matt, so appreciate you hanging out here and the everyone who's on as well. And Matt, what's the best way to reach you?
always call us or go on our website, and you can contact us through our website as well. But for sure.